welcome back to another episode of the Northern Lights Sportscast. My name is Nate. Here with me again, I have Dash and Cody. And today we are going to talk about the AFC edition of the 2022 NFL season review. And to start, we are going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. They finished first in the AFC North with a record of 12-4. They finished the year in the AFC Championship game versus the Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the year 8th in total offense, 5th in total defense. Dash, give us your thoughts first on this one.
Before I get my thoughts real quick,
Cody, I think we're done with the disguises. You can show yourself.
Oh, man, that was perfect. All right, so as for the Cincinnati Bengals this year, at the beginning of the season, after they went 0-2 to start the year against the Steelers and Cowboys, there was some questioning, including me, whether this team was kind of a flash in the pan last year. Didn't really know if they were going to amount to what they did last year this year. They definitely proved everybody wrong towards the end of the season. The offensive talent is as good as ever. Joe Burrow is definitely proven to be the real deal. That defense was also had some good players on it, but towards the end of the season, heading into that Buffalo game, I really thought their season was going to end there. They impressed everybody by dominating in Buffalo in a snowy game. But then come Kansas City, just unfortunately, a vice that has unfortunately hampered teams before. They got way too cocky before the Kansas City game. Burrow had the mayor about the paternity test with the mayor. I mean, it was all just disaster waiting to happen, and it hurt him in the worst way. Osai got that penalty right at the end of the game, which put the Chiefs in the field goal range and subsequently ended the Bengals.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. I mean, just the Bengals definitely came out this year and looked a lot different than we thought they would. I mean, they lost a Super Bowl last year, and typically that goes one of two ways. Either it goes horribly the year after that, and they are just distraught after losing the Super Bowl, or they maintain form and actually have a decent year the year after. And they ended up doing the latter, but not after having kind of a rocky start to the year. I remember after I believe it was week 5 or 6, we didn't know what this team was going to be quite yet, and then after that they really started to go on a roll and sprinted to the finish line. And then like you said, I have a lot of words for Cincinnati's fan base in regards to how they handled going up to that AFC Championship game with Kansas City. I mean, there's hyping your team up and there's getting excited about a game, and then there's what Cincinnati did, which was basically cursing their team from the start. That was how I felt, and a lot of people felt going into that game. And the Kansas City Chiefs definitely knew it. You heard Travis Kelce after the game talking about it. So, Cody, what are your thoughts on this?
I thought the Bengals had a pretty good season. They made it all the way back to the AFC Championship against their probably now pretty good rivals, Kansas City Chiefs, since it's been either Kansas City or Cincinnati these last 2 years. And every game it's with those two teams, it's been a win by a field goal to decide who's the winner. And the game before the AFC Championship, it was always the Bengals that got the field goal. And this year, it wasn't. This last game, it wasn't them. Sadly, I will say the O-line for Cincinnati probably got better. They didn't allow 9 sacks in the playoffs, so there's that.
Always a positive.
They didn't allow 9, but they did allow 5. And unfortunately, you talk about that O-line, they were great until injuries just hampered them come playoff time. They were down 3 of their starters in the Chiefs game.
Yeah. I mean, definitely better than, we thought they'd be for the offensive line last year. Like you said, was not that much of an issue this year until playoff time. But all right, if you guys are ready, we are going to move on to the second place team in the AFC North this year, and that would be the Baltimore Ravens, who went 10-7 this year. They finished in the AFC wildcard game versus the Cincinnati Bengals. They finished the year 19th in total offense and 3rd in total defense. This team went through quite a bit of turmoil this season. As Cody is trying to see here, they started the season with Lamar Jackson. Lamar, by the way, this season was his last year on his current contract. That'll be a big player later. But started the year with Lamar Jackson, and they were doing okay, but they were also finding ways to lose in some games. And as they got through the year, it got better. And then they lost Lamar Jackson. And then everything started to break loose a little bit. I mean, Tyler Huntley's a good backup.
Hey, he made the All-Star.
Yeah, he made the Pro Bowl. He made the Pro Bowl, even though he threw more picks than touchdowns in the regular season, but he made the Pro Bowl.
Well, also Derek Carr made the Pro Bowl.
Well, yeah, but Derek Carr threw a heck of a lot more touchdowns than interceptions.
We'll talk about him later.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think we're missing the big point right now with Baltimore. It's great of a season. I guess I wouldn't say it's great. It's been underachieving this entire era with Lamar Jackson, and now it's kind of the big question here. Can they or will they be able to pay him to keep him there? And even if they do, I think it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation. If you do pay him, great. I guess you still have a great quarterback, but you are going to be paying heaven and earth to keep him there. And I don't know if you'll be able to pay for anything else. And if he leaves, then you're basically throwing your hands up in the air and starting over from scratch.
Yeah. I remember heading into this season, that was one of the storylines is when were the Ravens going to sign Lamar Jackson, or were they going to sign him? And now the rumors going around that they're going to franchise tag him.
They can do that, but he is not going to stick around on the franchise tag.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't think he's going to play on the franchise tag. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. We've seen battles like this between teams and quarterbacks a lot within the last decade or so. And they've all ended in slightly different ways. So this will be interesting, especially since Lamar. There was a report that came out a couple weeks ago that Lamar had turned down somewhere north of $300 million total value on the contract.
And that is why I said heaven and earth, because he's going to be asking for a lot.
Which I found it weird that he declined that. I mean, I know he wants a lot of money, but I believe that would put him higher than any current quarterback, wouldn't it? I think so. Go ahead.
I don't know. I was going to say, who probably can afford that? The Rams.
Yeah, because they got no one else.
They'll just give him 5 more first-round draft picks for him.
Yeah, they'll just shell out some more.
I think
I would say Baltimore is a nice place. I've been to Baltimore. But, hey, if there's no money there, head to L.A. That's what all the YouTubers do.
I think Lamar realizes, too, with some of the contracts that have been given out recently, Mahomes' contract, Dak Prescott, and Deshaun Watson, he knows that there is some team out there, that's not the Ravens, that's going to give him this exorbitant amount that he wants. Yeah. And I guarantee there definitely is some team, quarterback desperate team out there that will be willing to shell at least $400 million to him.
Gosh, I can't even fathom that amount of money.
We can keep fathoming because we're never getting that much in our lifetime.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Don't you even start, mister.
I have smart glasses, so.
Cost me about $40 million just to pay for those glasses and that hat.
But now that we've talked about that, let's briefly talk about that AFC wildcard game with the Bengals, because that was quite a wild game. When we going into that game, a lot of people expected the Bengals to run away with that game, given kind of the fact that the Ravens, they didn't have Lamar Jackson. They had Tyler Huntley instead, which Tyler Huntley's, like we've said earlier, a good quarterback, but he's not the guy that's going to lead you all the way or win you a playoff game. But they still had a chance. Going into the fourth quarter, they still had a chance until they gave the ball away on quite an interesting fumble recovery for a touchdown from Cincinnati's 1-yard line.
Wasn't it Tate Hendricks who ran it back all the way?
Sam Hubbard.
Dang, that was close.
Yeah, Sam Hubbard of the Bengals. So,
hey, the Bengals got the job done. What else is there to say? Ravens, we made the playoffs, but we couldn't finish the job.
It really hurts Baltimore, though, because this team, especially that defense this year, they had the defense to go far. in these playoffs. There is no doubt about that.
Yes,
and the
they
fact
did.
that, a healthy Lamar at the beginning of the season, if they had that in the playoffs, this is a team that could have represented the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
It's just another what-if scenario.
I mean, wouldn't these probably be up there for one of their better defenses since Ray Lewis left?
Probably.
Yeah.
I would say so.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was a Ray Lewis caliber defense, but it was probably the best thing they've had since him. And to just waste that on a wild card loss has got to hurt for some Ravens fans. Either way, though, we are going to move on, if y'all are okay with that. And we are going to head over to the Steel City, the city of Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who finished third in the AFC North this year with a record of 9-8. They did not make the playoffs. They finished the year 26th in total offense and 10th in total defense. Dash, take it away.
Yeah, the Steelers this year definitely sort of exceeded expectations in certain aspects. I mean, they drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round of the draft this year, and we didn't know what to expect from that. Although they did start Mitch Trubisky at the beginning of the season, they kind of fell off of a little bit of a ledge at the middle of the season. They lost TJ Watt for a few weeks, and then, as is the Mike Tomlin tradition, he's got to finish with a record over 500, and that's what they did this year. They finished 9-8, and Mike Tomlin still has not finished the season under 500, which is quite a coaching feat, I must say, as Cody spins the terrible towel there. But, yeah, I don't know. This season, I don't know what to say about it as a Pittsburgh fan. I mean, there was some semblance of progress, like, Kenny Pickett and Najee Harris definitely making that offense look a little bit better. And the defense is still as good as it ever was for Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has always prided themselves on great defense, but I don't know what this brings for the future, though. I don't know if, they're going to take a step forward or a step backwards next year. We'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah. Take a look at their schedule here. Really big point there. I mean, they were, like Dash mentioned, they got over 500 this year, but it wasn't because of their offense. It was because of their defense. I mean,
if J.J. Watt didn't go out early, they probably still would have made the playoffs. I mean,
I'm sure you mean T.J. Watt, but yeah.
Dang nabbit.
Don't worry, we get them mixed up all the time. But I mean, I know a lot. I've heard a lot of Steelers fans on social media wanting their offensive coordinator Matt Canada fired. And looking at their schedule and the results they produced, we can see why. I mean, they lost a game. I mean, for example, they lost a game in Miami, 16-10, against a Dolphins team that was pretty decent this year, but had a down day that day.
Didn't this team almost make the playoffs still? Like, they still had a chance.
Yep. Yeah. All they needed the Dolphins to lose to the Jets, and the Dolphins beat the Jets by 5. So
they still had a chance to make it.
Yes, they did.
Sadly, it wasn't as epic as last season, where they made it in on a Raiders win in overtime instead of Raiders taking a tie. But
don't worry, there was some interesting Raiders stuff. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I don't know for the Steelers now. Looking at them, they're just kind of in the middle. I really don't know whether to think that they're going to get better or worse. I mean, they've shown flashes on both sides of the ball, but I don't know if it's going to be enough. And especially you're talking about Matt Canada, probably one of the worst offensive coordinators of the season in a league where there are a lot of horrible offensive coordinators. And to see that they kept him around, I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, it was pretty hard to believe given the results on the field this year. But seems to be the Steeler way, is consistency in all aspects of the organization. Because I believe that Kenny Pickett can be a pretty good quarterback given the right system and given the right coaches, of which I don't think they have the right one around him right now. But we'll see what the future holds for the Steelers.
I will say one thing. George Pickens was a very good pickup for them.
Yes. I mean, a lot of teams were skittish.
Season.
Well, a lot of teams were skittish of him in the draft because of his behavioral issues. But it seems to have panned out for Pittsburgh.
That one-handed catch, I don't remember.
Cincinnati.
Thank you.
Or no, Cleveland. It was Cleveland.
That one-handed catch was very impressive.
But, You know the MO for Steelers star wide receivers, right? It's they come out of nowhere, become all pros, become Pro Bowlers, and
Lose
then
their
just
mind.
become such cancers that they run themselves out of town within a matter of
they're
4 or
going to
5
lose their
years.
mind and then earn their way out of town.
And then go win a Super Bowl with an all-star quarterback.
Somehow. But all right, now we will move on to the last place team in the AFC North, the Cleveland Browns, who finished 7-10 this season. And Cody refuses to talk about this team for multiple reasons.
I don't want to touch this either.
I guess I'm alone on this topic for now.
Nobody wants to be near Deshaun Watson.
I'll make this short then.
Sorry, Drew Carey.
The Browns finished the season 18th in total offense, 20th in total defense. You look at their schedule here. They had a pretty rough go of things in the early part of the season. They only had 3 wins on their bye week, and were considered on an outside track of the playoffs. And then after that, Dash, remind me what week Deshaun Watson came back from suspension?
He came back week 13 against the Texans, ironically against his old team.
Yep, that's right. I forgot about the irony there. And Cleveland really hadn't shown much of anything of importance. Now, they weren't, I will give them this, they weren't the Cleveland Browns of old, but they definitely weren't the Cleveland Browns of the past couple of years. And they earned themselves a spot out of the playoffs. And even after Deshaun Watson came back, Deshaun hasn't played football in probably 2 seasons, or hadn't played football in 2 seasons at least at this point. And it showed. I mean, he had so much rust. He was so rusty for that game back against the Texans and every game after that. I mean, this includes a win where they beat the Ravens 13-3. I mean, they had hardly any offense this year. So it's a miracle, I feel like, that they finished in the top 20 in offense.
I mean, unless this team goes to the Super Bowl in this era with Deshaun Watson, there is still, in my mind, no justification to give him $230 million guaranteed for a quarterback who hasn't played in almost 2 years, who had all those lawsuits on his head at the time, and for what, honestly? I mean, you got rid of Baker Mayfield, the guy you drafted with the first overall pick.
Yeah.
You ran him out of town, basically. I mean, he didn't help himself, but you didn't help matters either, Cleveland. Yeah. And then, I mean, Jacoby Brissett, even he wasn't that bad with this Browns offense. And, they still did good with Jacoby Brissett. So now you have to look at this as like, was quarterback really the problem with the Cleveland Browns? Their defense was terrible this year.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought this team was just really a few pieces away, especially those last couple of years, especially that year where they beat the Steelers in the playoffs. Didn't they travel to Kansas City after that, or did they beat someone else and then travel to Kansas City?
No, they traveled to Kansas City right after Pittsburgh in the divisional round.
Okay. Well, still, even despite losing in the divisional round, I felt that this team had a lot of optimism going into the future. They were heading upwards. Yes, Baker Mayfield isn't probably the greatest quarterback they could have, but he was far better than anyone that they have had play for them in the past decade and a half.
I mean, the best quarterback they had in their new era before him was probably that 2008 season with Derek Anderson.
Yeah.
When they went 10-6.
Yeah. And the fact that they just gave it away altogether. Now, I understand. This only shows up as "thou shall not" on my screen. So
it says "thou shall not mention the Cleveland Browns."
But the Browns, they decided to sell their souls and ethics for this.
I mean, it's what the Steelers did about 18 years ago with Big Ben, and I mean, it worked. But like I'm saying, if this doesn't work, if they don't even get to a Super Bowl,
they will be laughed at.
This is a disaster.
Yes, I mean, it takes a lot this day and age in the NFL to somehow be more laughable or more disliked than the Houston Texans and the Washington Commanders, and I believe the Cleveland Browns have done that this year.
It's just crazy how quickly they turned from the lovable losers of the NFL. And, everybody loved when they made the playoffs. All of a sudden, now they're back to, what are you even doing in this league kind of mentality from some fans.
Yeah. But, all right. Now
let's mention a different team.
Yeah,
so
let's go to a different team. Let's go to a team that I think, honestly like a little bit more. Let's go to the First place, AFC South champion, Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags went 9-8 this season. They they finished in the AFC divisional round versus the Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the season 10th in total offense and 12th in total defense. Overall, I'd say a very good season for the Jags. And Jags fans got to feel pretty good after how this season ended. Cody, go ahead.
Big turnaround after last year. Just humongous turnaround. Signing that new head coach after Urban Meyer's epic failure. It's big, huge turnaround. Lawrence looked great. What?
The coach who shall not be named.
Oh, whoops. I mentioned him. Am I in trouble now?
It's a joke. Go ahead.
You didn't mention the team before, so you're fine.
Okay.
Makes up for it.
Alabama? But it's just a big turnaround. Lawrence looked great. What's the wide receiver? I forget his name.
Christian Kirk?
Yes, he did awesome. They also had wasn't Ingram the tight end?
Evan Ingram,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah,
Got him from
They
the
had a
Giants.
lot of good offensive players, and they just had one great season. It didn't end the way they wanted to. Well, they got to the divisional round.
It's a lot better than they thought it was
they could have
gonna go.
dreamed.
Yeah.
I mean, this team honestly,
Super Bowl, but
after
still
what
good.
happened last year, half the season they had this year, and it definitely wasn't looking the best to start either. They had to come back from 3-7 to win their division. But at the same time, this also proves, with Doug Peterson coming in and changing this team the way he has, it just proves how awful Urban Meyer was as a head coach. I mean, this team has talent on it. Urban Meyer couldn't figure out anything, couldn't figure out how to use it at all. He almost ruined Trevor Lawrence. So I'm very glad that they went with Doug Peterson, who may not be the greatest coach in a lot of people's eyes, especially with the way his tenure ended in Philadelphia. But he's still a very serviceable head coach, and he works very well with quarterbacks. And the fact is they needed somebody to help nurture Trevor Lawrence into being a better quarterback, and that's what they did. I especially didn't expect this team to really go anywhere even during the midseason. They traded away James Robinson to the Jets, and even then I was still kind of questioning, is this team really back, or are they still kind of the same as what they were? But they definitely proved a lot of people wrong. The Christian Kirk, the Evan Ingram contracts, they seem stupidly high-priced in the offseason, but once again, they proved us all wrong.
Yeah.
I wanted James Robinson to stay, but they weren't using him as well as what's their star running back that turned it around?
ETN. Well, ETN got a lot better.
Yeah, he really turned it around, and Robinson wasn't doing much. I kind of liked Robinson because he was from
they didn't give him any work to
FCS
do.
League. Yeah, and the Jets kind of did the same thing when they got him, but
yeah.
So.
Yeah, just a word on Robinson. I mean, I
that hurt my fantasy league too. I had Robinson.
Now, we're typically fans a little bit of FCS football, so we've seen James Robinson play football at Illinois State. We know how good he is, and to see how misused he was this year and even last year a little bit by Jacksonville is just heartbreaking to some of us. And then to go to New York and be pretty much just ignored altogether is really sad. But nevertheless, hopefully he's on to greener pastures now. Dash, any final words?
Greener.
I mean, the fact that the Jaguars had this massive turnaround, they got a very bright outlook for, I think future years personally, especially with the way the rest of this AFC South is looking, which I am honestly not excited to talk about this division because there's a lot of junk behind the Jacksonville Jaguars right now. But I mean, that's just makes the Jaguars' future all the brighter. The rest of the division is collapsing on itself. I think the Jaguars have a very good shot at taking this division for quite a few years now.
All right, so let's dive into the depths of the rest of this division. Next up are the Tennessee Titans, who finished second in the AFC South this year. They went 7-10 this year. They finished the year 28th in total offense and 15th in total defense. This was also the team that was projected to win the AFC South this year by most analysts.
Well, I mean, they had the 1 seed last year.
Yes,
so
they did.
A lot of people were
They've
thinking
had
that
the 1 seed the last 2 years. Guess what happened? They lose in the first game.
Yeah. I mean, this team just fell apart. Now, a lot of Titans fans would definitely attribute a lot of that to injuries. They did get injured, but even before a lot of them got injured, before Tannehill got injured, they were not looking good. I mean, you look at their schedule. I mean,
Henry couldn't even save them.
They got to their early Week 6 bye, and they were 3-2, thinking that maybe they might be able to keep making a push. Except the fact that their wins had come against the Raiders, the Colts, and the Commanders. Not exactly three teams you'd think that, these are great wins. Because then their losses, or that early in the season, was an abysmal loss to the Bills, and then a really close loss in New York to the Giants. They came out of the bye and won games at home versus the Colts and then an away game at the Texans before losing in overtime to the Chiefs. And they did win a couple more games after that, but after their win, unfortunately, at Green Bay, Dash won't like that, but after their win at Green Bay, they lost every single game for the rest of the year.
And that was the weird part about that, though. Their best game of the season overall, the way they looked on both sides of the ball, was in that game against Green Bay on the road in hostile conditions on prime time. And a lot of people were concerned about their offense in that game. And their offense did just fine. They passed the ball better than the entire season. So after that game, you figure, okay, they finally turned it around. They got this, maybe they got this figured out. Well, then Todd Downing decides to get a DUI while he's over in Green Bay. So unfortunately, they fell apart after that, kind of like Todd Downing did. So, yeah, Downing was a horrible offensive coordinator, and it's definitely evident to how quickly this team collapsed. I mean, you have the best running back in the NFL in your offense, and you still can't utilize a decent offense. That is just laughable.
Do you guys think Henry's going to stay with the Titans after this abysmal year?
I believe he's still under contract.
I mean, I don't know if long-term he's going to want to stick around. I mean, They lost A.J. Brown this offseason. We haven't even talked about that. That was the move that signified the downfall of this team this year.
Well, you had to question why they made it. I remember how shocked we were on draft night because it didn't seem like they didn't seem like they needed to move him.
Nope.
Well, they couldn't find a contract with him, and I don't think he was going to play with them this year if they couldn't get a bigger contract for him. So they just said, they made things easier on themselves by just trading them over to Philadelphia. But sure, that makes things easier for you. You don't have to go out with these long contract negotiations. But
what did they get?
Boy, that just ruins teams' morale.
Picks. They didn't really get anybody.
Yeah, they just got a few. I don't even know if they got a first rounder for him, to be quite honest.
No.
Yeah, so
which
it's a horrible trade. And their GM was fired this season. And it kind of stems back to that move because it was after the Philadelphia game.
I mean, where do you think this team goes forward? I mean, I've always wondered, is Ryan Tannehill the exact answer here, or is he really a short-term solution?
Both quarterbacks they have now. Malik Willis didn't really look like much. They can keep having him practice and get better, but Tannehill, he's not going to get you there. So,
yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I mean, I thought Tannehill was going to be the long-term option, but these last few years have definitely proven that that's not going to be the case.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to move on to the third place Indianapolis Colts. They finished the year.
Where do we begin?
4-12-1. They finished the year in the bottom four in both categories.
Let's just start with a score that me and Nate really love, 33-0. That was like the best score I ever heard of now. So,
I mean, that was just, to be honest, though, that was just the cherry on top of a poop Sunday for this season for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, you go back to hiring Jeff Saturday and the fiasco that was Matt Ryan and the Sam Ehlinger kind of back and forth quarterback nonsense. And then also the 34 points given up in the fourth quarter against Dallas. I mean, this was just a horrific season for a team that did have playoff aspirations before the season started.
That was a nice Christmas present.
Yeah, Cody and I rather enjoyed that Christmas Eve.
I didn't even watch the game, but it was a nice Christmas present.
Or wait, wasn't that the week before Christmas? Yeah, it was. That was the weekend before Christmas.
Wasn't that the whiteout or no?
Giants.
Yes.
No. Yeah, but it was. No, that game was
No, that was the Giants game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then both of those games were nice Christmas presents. 33-0 and then a 61 field goal.
Yeah, but the Colts, I mean, they're in such shambles right now, and Jim Irsay is driving this team into the ground.
Yeah. I know, Dash, you've mentioned it a couple times that there are owners in sports that you typically look at and go, these are probably the worst owners in sports. Jim Irsay is one that in the past hasn't been talked about very much, but very quietly under the radar is kind of around there. I mean,
If it wasn't for Dan Snyder,
Manning.
he would be the worst in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that can change then soon. So
it could.
Hopefully.
I mean, who'd they hire as their head coach?
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Oh, the Colts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I'll look it up.
I don't think we've been paying attention too much. But the thing is, though, with the Colts, I mean, or with Jim Irsay in particular, I mean, the thing is, he does care about his team. He does. He wants them to be successful, but he has no idea how to do it at all.
No.
I mean, he almost ruined the career of Peyton Manning, and now he ruined the career of Andrew Luck. And yeah, now he's just ruining his team as a whole.
Who's
the new coach, Cody?
Yes, Shane Steichen. I was going to say Stetchen, but it's Shane Steichen, Eagles offensive coordinator.
That's right.
Well, we'll see how that works out for him. The Eagles definitely had a good offense this year. So.
Taylor. The other running back I had on my fantasy league was Taylor.
Cody, we're not here to talk about your fantasy football failings. We'll save that for another time. Because there's a long story there. But Taylor just he got hurt, and then that's just that. He didn't really do anything this season. Unlike the previous season, he was awesome. Yeah.
But somehow, some way, there was still one team in this division that was even worse than that.
Yep, and that would be the fourth place Houston Texans, who finished the season 3-13-1. They finished the season 30th in total offense and 27th in total defense. I'm just going to show the schedule here. No, they were not tied with the Colts.
No, who did they tie?
They tied the Colts in week 1
of the year at home.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last game of the year, they had the first overall pick all up for grabs, but
and then they won
Lovie
the
Smith.
Colts.
Well, Lovie Smith knew he was getting fired. This is why I will love Lovie Smith forever now. He knew he was getting fired. He knew they weren't keeping him around. So he just said, you know what? To heck with you guys and your first overall pick. I'm going to make sure these guys win this game. And when they did.
By one.
It just baffles me, though. If this was their long-range plan, to tank and to kind of, fire the regime and get a new guy that you wanted eventually, why not keep David Culley around after last year? Why did they just fire him after one season and then just go with another guy that they were just going to have for 1 year?
Because the Texans love dead cap.
I mean, the McNairs really don't know what they're doing right now. They stuck with O'Brien for way too long, and now they're kind of hopped up on. They're in a hole, and they don't know how to dig themselves out of it, which is the problem. Hopefully now with D'Amico Ryan sending over there, they can get better, but I don't know. Yeah. It's just hard to have faith in this team.
Cody?
I wonder if we're going after the Alabama quarterback.
Bryce Young? Yeah. Probably. That's the guy I think they're going to gun for. That's why they better hope that nobody trades up in front of them with the Bears.
Hopefully, them picking a first round quarterback doesn't go as badly as it did last time.
To be fair,
started out good.
It did.
They made the playoffs with Deshaun Watson.
To be honest, though, that situation was kind of already screwed before the scandals and stuff.
Yeah, because he already expressed he wanted out.
Yeah.
And before that, they had Brock Osweiler, the Peyton Manning.
You don't need
the eighth wonder of the world, Brock
fans.
Osweiler's contract.
Yeah.
Don't you remember the NFL honors speech from Houston that year?
No, I don't watch the NFL honors.
I watched the monologues, but I forget which. It was Keegan Michael Key. That was one of his taglines in that speech. That was cool. I liked that. All right, off to brighter pastures here.
Off to a brighter division, preferably.
We're going to visit the AFC East, the first place Buffalo Bills, who finished the season 13-3. They finished the year losing to the Bengals in the AFC divisional rounds. They finished the year fourth in total offense and second in total defense. Dash, go ahead.
Well, first things first, as all of us football fans want to say, we are so thankful for Damar Hamlin being able to recover after the Cincinnati Bengals game. That was probably one of the scariest scenes in football's history.
Agreed.
And then, second of all, this was just a disappointment of a year, and now it's starting to become a wonder of this is a lost era. And that is crazy to say. I never thought, going in a couple of years ago with Josh Allen getting better, I really thought this team had at least, a good decade of like, okay, this team should be a Super Bowl contender. This should be a Super Bowl favorite. But after this year, I'm starting to wonder if that kind of contending status is going to start to slowly close. I mean, they've had a prime chance at the prime chance. This seemed like the year that they were going to be able to do it. And they just fell apart against Cincinnati. And there were certain games this year where they just didn't look like themselves. Earlier in the year against Miami, the home game against Minnesota, they had a horrible performance on defense in that game. And Josh Allen did not look like himself either. And
he got hurt halfway. Oh wait,
I mean, he had that. I mean, yes, he did have that elbow injury, but it's still with how talented that team is. And I mean, you could also blame the Von Miller injury, but there's still no excuse for not even making it to the AFC Championship game.
Yeah. I mean, as much as Cody and I loved that game the Vikings played against Buffalo, if I'm Buffalo and I'm the fans, I throw that game out the window. I don't think that game is a proper representation of that team. However, the losses to the Jets and the Dolphins, very different story. Like you said, I mean, this team had such high hopes this year.
When I was thinking about the Bills at the beginning of the season, I would say yes, they were a Super Bowl contender. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs,
Von Miller on the defense.
They got Von Miller. And then they start out very well. And then they're lost to the Jets. And at the time, I was thinking the Jets were kind of a dark horse team for me. But that was kind of before all the Zach Wilson fiasco. And but when that started to happen, it was kind of like that loss kind of stricken, like check mark saying not Super Bowl contenders. And then their loss to Miami, that also check marked the thing. And just for me, I started not believing in them making to the Super Bowl. And that led me to choosing the Bengals in that game. Because it was going to like the Bengals have more talent and have shown that they're able to win these types of games. Bills have choked before. And they continue to now. They have lost 4 Super Bowls. I can't say the same thing because the Vikings have also lost 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there are AFC twin.
I was rooting for a Buffalo Bills Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl.
I agree because at least one of the streaks would end.
Win a Super Bowl. I know, Dash, that would be a painful memory.
No, actually, I think Dash wouldn't mind seeing Buffalo in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
No, they're definitely a city that deserves it. It's just unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to get it with this regime.
Yeah, which sucks because they have such good talent on this team.
I would say the head coach has really just kept it up, though, too.
Sean McDermott is a mastermind.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, Sean McDermott is a good head coach, but you also have to wonder, is he really the guy, though? I mean, at the same time, I'm a little worried that people are so hyped up on the McVay kind of stuff, getting a young head coach, kind of promises new things. And, I mean, it worked for a few years, but I'm starting to wonder if that kind of coaching has a little bit of a shelf life. Because even in Los Angeles, McVay seems like it's gone past the best days. I mean, I feel like it's something you might have to take advantage of early, or else you're going to miss your chance.
With all those young guys, you have to wonder how long their head's going to stay in it. I mean, there's a lot of coaches that do start young and will go way into their lives coaching. And then there's other ones that discover after maybe coaching a team, even being a head coach for a few years, that decide, this is a little more than I thought I was going to have at this time in my life, and maybe I want to do something else. And I know that's been a rumor for Sean McVay the last couple of off seasons. Is he going to go into the broadcast booth? That's not what the Rams fans want to hear, but there's been rumors around that all the time. But speaking of young head coaches, let's head down south to Miami. The second place Miami Dolphins finished 9-8 on the season this year. They finished their season in the AFC wildcard game versus the Buffalo Bills. And they finished the year 11th in total offense and 24th in total defense. Cody, I'm going to ask you to start on this one.
Concussion protocol. They don't know that meaning at all. They do not know the word of this meaning. Dash, you muted.
No, I think he's just trying to mouth things
No,
out.
I am not. I actually accidentally was muted. But that's how you spell it when you go into concussion
Yes.
protocol.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Tua should know, sadly.
Unfortunately.
That really just had me worried for most of the season for Miami and with their new head coach. Is like the way they treated Tua. I know you want to put yourself on the line, man, but don't actually. That's scary.
A season of scandals is probably the best way to describe Miami's season this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they started with a punishment from the NFL to begin the year.
Yep, and that was for the Tom Brady and Sean Payton kind of fiasco that started, and also the paying people to lose kind of thing. So this team had scandal around their necks before the season even started. And the Tua thing that happened against Buffalo and Cincinnati, that didn't help matters. And it also hurts, Tua had that concussion against Buffalo and then got re-injured against Cincinnati. And then also it didn't help, for a while. It's like, okay, maybe he's fine now. Then he had the game against Green Bay where he had a concussion in the first half, but yet he still played the rest of that game.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of questions around that medical staff. And he eventually got another concussion against the Packers later in the year. So
are we sure that they got the Chiefs wide receiver fairly? Are we positive about this?
Tyreek Hill?
Yeah. Are we sure?
I mean, I don't know. Tyreek Hill got the money, but I think considering the circumstances right now, I'd rather be back in Kansas City.
Yeah. Miami does have a bright future. They got a lot of talent on that team, but now with
just don't mess
all
it up.
the injuries to Tua, you have to wonder how long, whether he should even play football again, is honestly my question. He had three potential concussions this year. I mean, there are plenty of players that have hardly even had one their whole career and that already made a big impact on their life after football, let alone the fact that he's had three. You have to wonder how his head's doing.
Don't worry, his brother will take his place next year.
Isn't his brother a wide receiver?
No, his brother's quarterback in Maryland.
Never mind.
So he'll take his spot here coming up soon. The other thing I got to say is, where did you get your vape, McDaniels? I really, really like to know.
We are a kid-friendly show. Now we are going to move on to an old reliable team in the AFC East that just couldn't quite crack it this year. The New England Patriots, they finished third in the AFC East this year with a record of 8-9. They missed the playoffs, finished 17th in total offense and 11th in total defense. This year, not quite what Patriots fans had hoped for. They did not take that step forward that we thought they would with Mac Jones. And in fact, one could even say they took a step backwards with Mac Jones this year. Now, on the other hand, sometimes, quarterbacks go through a sophomore slump. But not the direction that we thought New England would take this year. I mean, in a year in which there was turmoil earlier in the year between quarterbacks. They had two quarterbacks played for them earlier in the year between Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I mean, didn't Zappi lead them in the overtime loss in Green Bay?
Yeah, well, it was Brian Hoyer who started, and then he got hurt, so Zappi had to come in. And he also led them to that big victory against Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
It's always so sad to see the New England Patriots lose. Not.
I was going to say, are you saying that with a straight face?
It's just it was just at the beginning of the season. They didn't even know who's calling the offensive plays. Was it Patricia or the other guy?
Or Joe Judge. I mean,
thank you. But that was the big thing coming out of the New England camp. They don't know who's going to call the plays, and Mac Jones even got mad.
And I mean, personally, to me, it didn't matter who was going to be calling it. I don't know why Belichick brought either of these guys back onto his staff after seeing how they did as head coaches on other teams. And I mean, it's kind of concerning to see him do that. But at the same time, he did get Bill O'Brien back as an offensive coordinator now to be there. And to be fair, O'Brien was a good offensive coordinator when he was there the first time. But It was just, I knew this season was going to be a disaster for them when I saw who they had running the offense.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Texans. He won't hurt you anymore.
All right. So now we're going to move on to another team that also had quite the up and down season. The New York Jets. They finished 4th in the AFC East this year with a record of 7-10. They missed the playoffs, finished the year 29th in total offense and 4th in total defense.
They also get the award for biggest disappointment of the season.
Yeah, yes. I'm going to put up their schedule here.
I am so disappointed. I had high hopes for this team. So high hopes. They got Sauce Gardner. They beat the Bills early on. I thought this team was going to be like at first they were kind of my dark horse to make the playoffs. Not go far, but make the playoffs. And then all the things about Zach Wilson come out. Not going out well, and then Joe Flacco is their quarterback for a little bit. And I like Flacco. He won the Super Bowl back in the day, but he's just not going to be your guy to take you to the playoffs.
No.
They need a quarterback.
And then but Sauce Gardner really stepped it up on the defense.
Defensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, he had great cornerback there for you, Jets. Just
second coming of Darrelle Revis, basically, who also got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, they solved their defense.
Yes, but the offense now is in a lot of questions. And you also mentioned the offense and great rookies. I mean, they also had Garrett Wilson that they picked up in the first round this year. It was a great wide receiver pickup out of Ohio State.
But who's
now the big question becomes quarterback. I mean, Zach Wilson's obviously not the guy after the season. When you have to rely on Mike White to be, your best quarterback in the season, that's not a recipe for success, unfortunately.
He's a good storyline, but he's not the greatest long-term quarterback.
He'll have one good game, and then he's done.
I personally think it kind of – I'm a little superstitious about it, but I personally think it stems back to Joe Namath. He cursed this team for that Super Bowl win. It cost him way down the road.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll turn it around again, and they'll have beliefs, and then they'll just tear it down.
I would like to believe in Robert Saleh. I think he is a great coaching mind, but unfortunately, just a lot of things hit this team in the wrong way this year.
Yeah, wrong situation, wrong year. All right, time to cheer ourselves up a little bit. Let's move on to the AFC West with the first place Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the year 14-3. As I just said, they won the Super Bowl over the Eagles. They finished the year first in total offense and 16th in total defense. It's something very typical about the Chiefs every year is they always have a good offense with Patrick Mahomes. I always feel like no matter in what game, they always have a shot with him at quarterback. However, their Achilles heel still is and seems to will remain their defense. They just can't seem. I mean, it improved, but they just can't seem to put on the field a top 10 defense. They consistently have a top 10 offense, but they can't seem to match that quite with their defense.
Even without Tyreek Hill, they made it all the way. They picked up some good wide receivers to replace him. Juju,
Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Yep, they still had Pringle and Hardman. But those two barely got to play this year. They were both injured, weren't they?
Actually, Pringle's not with them anymore.
Oh, my bad. But Hardman was injured, and that was their number one wide receiver for the longest time, wasn't he?
He was their number 2 behind Hill. But, yeah, he was a great speedster, and, yeah, he was gone for the Super Bowl.
Kind of sad to see Allaire not get to play much this year, but McKinnon and Pacheco, or however you say his name.
You had it. Isaiah Pacheco.
Those two really stepped it up this year, and McKinnon made the smart play to win the Super Bowl.
And Nate, you were commenting earlier on the fact that they don't have a top 10 defense, and they hardly ever do. I mean, that's just kind of the Andy Reid special for you. He's an offensive-minded guy. Defenses aren't going to be exactly the priority. And honestly, who needs a top 10 defense? I mean, they've won 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 seasons, so clearly they don't need a top 10 defense to win the Super Bowl. They've definitely proven that.
It might save
especially when you got a guy like Patrick Mahomes being your quarterback.
It might save their fans a little bit of money on their heart medication bill, though.
Andy Reid, please keep drawing mustaches. I love that.
They do like making good commercials.
It definitely proves that this team is just one step closer to becoming a dynasty. I
Yeah.
really feel like there's a good possibility, as long as Mahomes and Reed are together, there's a good chance this team becomes a dynasty soon.
I kind of hate that people are like saying that they're becoming the new Patriots. They could, yes, but it's only 2 Super Bowls. I'll probably start saying, "Hey, I don't like this team when they win 5 Super Bowls," but it's only 2 right now. I don't hate them yet.
Yeah.
They also have very likable players on their team. You got Mahomes. You got the head coach, Andy Reid, one of the most loved guys in the NFL. And then you also got Travis Kelce. He's a very fun personality at tight end. So a lot of likable guys on this team.
Yeah. I mean, this team, honestly, this team never needed any ammo to probably get to the Super Bowl, but they were given it anyway. Now, there weren't that many people. Commenting on how Travis Kelce said after the Super Bowl win that no one believed in them this year. That really isn't true. There were plenty of people that did think the Patriots could go all the way, but there were some people that doubted them. There were some people that said stuff about them. The Cincinnati Bengals, just not needed, but nevertheless they used it to their advantage in the right way. So good for Chiefs fans. They get a second one in 4 years and third all time. So they'll get to hang up another banner in Arrowhead. Now we're going to move on to the LOL section of the rest of the AFC West. We're going to start with the second place Los Angeles Chargers, who finished the season 10-7 and finished quite hilariously in the AFC wildcard round versus the Jaguars. They finished the year 13th in total offense and 21st in total defense. Guys, take it away.
Yeah, this was kind of like they say there's a term called chargering, where you have expectations placed on your shoulders and you expect to be a very good team. You have a lot of talent, probably one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, and they just underachieve expectations. And this is just another example of one of those years for the Chargers. They've had years like this before, 2006, 2010, 2018, where they have these years where they should be so much of a better team than they end up being. And this was just another example of one of those years. They made the playoffs this year. That's good. And they had a 27-point lead against the Jaguars. That's also good.
Wasn't quite enough.
But you got to keep that lead, and that they did not.
Or more than a field goal in the second half, please.
And it also makes you wonder, is Brandon Staley the guy to lead this team? I really don't think so. A lot of us don't think so, but they have to keep him. I mean, he
focuses too much on stats. He really does.
He's an analytical nut, like a lot of coaches these days, and I'm not sure if I like that.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their schedule, I just can't get over that wild card loss. But
hey, if there's another team looking at it and they're saying, "Hey, we made it to the playoffs. Who we got to play?" I'm a little worried. Oh, it's the Chargers. Never mind, we're good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's apparently very much what the Jags thought, given that they actually went down 27-0. But all right,
almost as bad as 33-0.
Yeah, exactly. But don't worry, we'll have another team yet that we have some interesting things to chat about. Speaking of those such teams, we're going to move down to third place in the AFC West with the Las Vegas Raiders, who finished the year 6-11 on the year. They skipped the playoffs. They finished the year 12th in total offense and 26th in total defense. And as Dash said, I think all three of us can agree they should have kept Rich Bisaccia, their legendary special teams coordinator, that left them after that season, after he was not going to get the head coaching job, and he went to Green Bay, as Dash likes. Take it away, Dash.
Yeah, it just starts right there. They should have kept Rich Bisaccia as their head coach. Then they wouldn't have the big problem of signing Josh McDaniels, who, I mean, the Broncos and Colts could tell you how much of a disaster this was going to be. Are you saying you got his older brother? You got David Carr?
Yep.
But, they shouldn't have hired Josh McDaniels to begin with. And even if they didn't keep Bisaccia, don't get Josh McDaniels. I mean, that's only a recipe for disaster right there. I mean, sure, they got the big offseason acquisition of Devontae Adams to reunite with Derek Carr, but at the end of the day, when you got Josh McDaniels as your head coach, that's only going to get you so far. And clearly, it didn't get the Raiders anywhere this year.
No.
Now, we were thinking last year might have been a flash in the pan for the Raiders that, okay, like maybe they overachieved a little bit and they're going to come back down a little bit this year. But this was more than just a little tumble down a small slope. This was a complete fall off a cliff.
Yeah. I mean, Josh McDaniels, I've always thought, has been a very good product of the success in New England. He had the gift of playing with Tom Brady and all those players they've had cycle through that offense. And I don't think it was a great thing that he backed out of the Colts job. Now, it was revealed now that he got hired in Vegas why he backed out of the Colts job, which is a really interesting reason altogether.
An airplane toilet.
Yeah.
We'll let you all go read that article if you want to know that. We won't talk about it here. And especially given that this is not Josh McDaniels' first time being a head coach in the NFL. Go back and look at the Broncos when he coached them, and you'll understand why we just don't think he was a good hire. And the Raiders are very quickly figuring that out. Now, I don't think they'll fire him. They can't fire him. They paid him too much money. They can't fire him because they are broke in the Raiders, which is ironic given that they're in Vegas.
The one thing I will say is with all this stuff, at least they didn't have any like last year they had Ruggs, they had the head coach thing. At least that didn't happen this year.
Yeah, they had a different head coaching thing this year.
off the field got better, on the field got worse. Basically, that's how the season went.
Yep.
So you have one upside there, but I don't know if it's the upside you wanted.
Yeah.
And I mean, now they got rid of Derek Carr, who I always felt was
Have
not.
they?
Yes,
Yep,
they released him.
Okay.
I always felt that he was not the issue. Yet, because Cody mentioned earlier in the episode that Carr had the most interceptions in the NFL this year. Except, didn't he have 15 or 16 interceptions?
16, I think.
Yeah, he had 16 interceptions. Yet this is also the same NFL that we had one year that Jameis Winston had the same amount of interceptions as he had touchdowns.
30-30.
Yes. And somehow Derek Carr is now like the worst quarterback in the NFL because he threw 16 interceptions.
Well, you know what the Raiders' game plan is now? They're doing the same thing that the Jets are doing. They're going after Aaron Rodgers. They want to bring him here.
Yeah, the Jets are. I read an article that Derek Carr is going to the Jets this weekend, staying in their facility.
Interesting.
So
It's basically like a recruiting visit at this point. I don't know.
If you want me to talk to Rodgers, I'm in the retreat still.
He's still in the darkest retreat.
He's going to be
It's not
there
as-
forever now.
It's not as peaceful as you guys think. They make weird noises and gurgling noises. So, it brightened up.
All right, darkness retreat must be over.
Wow.
Yeah. I guess I can leave now. So,
But, all right. So,
Hold on. Don't leave. We have one more team to talk about. And all I have to
Unfortunately,
say is
we're going to move to the Denver Broncos.
good. I didn't do that one. I wasn't going to do that
Fourth place
one.
Denver Broncos finished the year 5-12. I'm not even going to read off their offensive and defensive stats.
they speak for themselves.
They finished
like
last
Russell
in
Wilson.
total offense.
For
Very appropriate looking at their schedule.
a team that was supposed to have this offensive genius as their head coach and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And last in offensive production.
How genius is a coach that uses all 3 timeouts after you lose the game?
In Seattle,
It doesn't
of all
use any
places.
of them.
How?
Yeah, it doesn't use any of them when it's 4th down.
I am so annoyed at that coach.
They only scored 30
can't
plus
let that
points
go.
once this year. Once.
An interesting stat: if they'd allowed 8, or if they had scored 18 points or more, they would have won, I think, over half of their games. They probably would have been a playoff team.
Yeah. I mean, they lost multiple games. Like the game 1, they lost 17-16. They lost in week 5 to the Colts in overtime 12-9.
And another Thursday night spectacular.
Yep. And then they lost in week 6.
Fans were leaving.
Yeah.
They were leaving.
Yep.
That was the whole montage at the end of the game. They're just showing fans leaving.
Because what's
At
the
the end of
point of
regulation.
watching this?
They're like, I have work on Friday. I cannot stay here to watch this.
Yeah. I mean, they lost
I
so
just
many
remember
games.
They showed for 5 minutes. Fans just leaving.
They lost so
Game's
many
still
games by
close.
less than 20 points, and you're giving
You know
up
what
less
I-
than 20.
You know what I think it was? It was the fact that their stadium caught on fire back in the spring. It was just a sign of things to come. It was a sign from the gods that this was going to be a horrible season for the Denver
Dumpster fire.
Broncos.
Smoke signal. They were trying to smoke signal fans to like get ready, but it didn't really work.
No, they wanted to get on the
Get
ride.
ready to ride?
Like,
Get ready to
like
ride?
Dash says on his name tag there, he's on the ride. It was quite the bumpy ride for Broncos fans this year.
I'm just happy they got rid of Hackett. He's a hack.
I could have, and personally as a Packers fan, I could have told you that 3 years ago. This guy's a terrible, and Jaguars fans can agree. This guy is not a good offensive coordinator to begin with. The only reason that he got a head coaching offer is because Aaron Rodgers carried him with the Packers offense. He was terrible. He got fired in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Didn't
anybody
he
can
get another job
with the New York Jets along with Todd Downing.
This is a team. This is a coach that had never called plays in the NFL before this season.
No, the only things he calls are timeouts at the end of the game.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm not letting that go, Dash. I'm
No,
not
you're
letting
not.
that go.
Don't let it go. But all right, everyone, that will do it for us today. Stay tuned for this next week where we will reveal our third episode, which will not be a season review episode. We will cover multiple topics. Look forward to that later this week. See y'all next time.